Are you curious about timeouts or spankings or even restraining children, wondering whether it's helpful or whether it's hurtful? What are the effects long term? What happens in the brain and the body? What happens in the nervous system? Well, hi, I'm Jackie Flynn. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, a registered play therapist, and the host of Play Therapy Community Podcast. In this video, we're going to learn from Lisa Dion. She is a licensed professional counselor, a registered play therapist supervisor, and also the creator of Synergetic Play Therapy. Well, hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us in this video. And I'm excited just to jump right in. So let's start with question number one. When our children are acting out, it's a common feeling to want to just put them in timeout or spank them or restrain them. Can you explain what actually is happening inside us as parents when these urges arise?
Yeah, what a great place to start. So, when our children are doing something, and this is the response in us, we want to put them in timeout, we want to restrain them, we want to spank them. It's important for us to understand that what's really going on is we're scared. It boils down to that. We just became afraid. And the urge that's arising, and parents, this is a natural, normal urge. I think that there's so much shame around the urge, but it's a normal, natural urge because it's our own defense pattern and our own defense system kicking in because we're scared. We feel threatened in response to whatever it is that our child is doing. Maybe they're yelling something at us that feels really hard and personal. Maybe they're physically threatening us. Maybe they're doing something and we're feeling out of control. There can be so many things that are happening that give rise to this, but it boils down to we're afraid. And then the next thing is that so many of us haven't been taught what to do with that when we get afraid. And so the impulse and instinct is I now need to do something to my child to get my child to stop.
Yeah.
Because if my child can stop, then I don't have to feel afraid anymore. And that I think is one of the biggest takeaways or learnings from this conversation, Jackie, is that to understand that this desire in us, because we call it, well, I'm disciplining or I'm teaching my child appropriate social skills, but that's not actually what's going on. What's actually going on is I'm afraid. I'm trying to do something to you because I don't know what to do with myself in those moments. And I need you to stop because I'm really afraid and I'm really uncomfortable. And my defense mechanism and my patterns have just come up. So, natural, normal urge, but it boils down to what's happening inside of us ultimately. We're
Oof.
afraid.
Even hearing you describe that, I can feel the activation in my nervous system just recalling situations. Okay, so that's so helpful to know. I'm wondering, let's jump into number two. Like, what happens inside of the child when they're put in timeout or spanked or restrained?
Yeah. So we just finished this conversation about us being afraid.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why they were doing what they were doing in the first place is because they were also struggling. So some part of them was also afraid or overwhelmed or challenged or whatever. And so when we think about putting them in a restraint or putting them in timeout or doing something like that, we need to recognize that we're adding to their system that's already scared. It's already overwhelmed. It's already in a distress response. And so what happens is that we risk exacerbating that. We risk pushing them further into a place where their brain is saying, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. And then there's a piece in here too where we then become linked in their brain with an experience that doesn't feel safe, an experience that doesn't feel supportive, an experience that doesn't feel really helpful, really deep down, because the thing that the child is screaming for, even though that may not be the words that are coming out of their mouth, they're not actually saying, "Could you please help me?" They're saying, "You're such a," but what
Thank
they're
you,
actually
Lord.
saying is, "I don't know what to do with what's going on inside of me. I don't know. I need you to help me."
Mhm.
And so when we put them in a timeout, we're actually separating them from us. So we're separating them from the help. When we spank them, we're separating them from the help that they're reaching for. And that's an interesting piece to understand,
Yeah.
is that their system is scared, and when we bring something like spanking or the timeouts, and we're isolating, or we're actually bringing physical pain into their body, we run the risk of sending them further into what I call a dysregulated state, further into a place of not being able to manage what's going on inside.
Mhm.
Jackie, I want to say one other thing, because sometimes when I teach this or I share this, parents will say, "Yeah, but it works. See my child, I see my child calm down."
Mhm.
And what I want parents to really consider here is, did it work really? Like really? Like what was the goal of that? Was it really just to stop the behavior? If that was the goal, then sure, then it worked. But but is that really the goal here, or is it more about, how do I teach a child how to be with themselves so that they know what to do? How do I teach a child how to feel safe inside with themselves? How do I um, teach the child how to actually legitimately respect me, not from fear, but like a genuine respect in relationship? Exactly. Because I would argue that in some of these situations, then the answer would be no, it wasn't successful.
Yeah.
So maybe I got the behavior to stop, but there's a rupture that went with that, a rupture within the child, and potentially a rupture also in the relationship, as well.
Oh,
So in those moments, we're scared and they're scared. And the child's responding and acting out, and we're responding and acting out. And that's why these situations feel so messy and so confusing.
yeah. It just seems to make it bigger and harder for everyone. Okay, so what can we do as parents when we feel the urges to arise to maybe put our child in timeout, or to spank, or to restrain them?
So, as we're talking here, we really have to start with us. Parents, I want to normalize the desire to have the script, the desire to say, "Okay, what's step one? What's step two? What do I do if I'm not going to spank? What am I going to do if I'm not going to throw them in timeout? What am I going to do?" And before there's the doing, the answer is really, how do I show up and be in the moment?
Mm.
So in the last little segment, I talked about how in the moment when the child is acting out, what the child's really wanting is our help.
Mhm.
Well, what kind of help? They're actually wanting to borrow the part of us that's a bit more steady inside. They're trying to borrow what I call our own regulation, our own regulatory capacity, which is our own ability to stay with ourselves, and to stay with the intensity. And so, in order for us to be able to offer that to the child, which is what they're seeking, we need to do that for ourselves first.
Mhm.
So, I want to give an example that literally happened yesterday, Jackie. So, I'm driving in the car with my daughter, and my daughter's in a mood, and in this mood, she's saying not so nice things, and she's saying stuff, and there was a part of me that felt the personal attack. Right, I felt that urge arise in me, the part that wanted to look at her and wanted to say, like, "You can't say that to me," or the part of me that wanted to make her stop,
Mhm.
because what she was saying was so uncomfortable inside of me. And I felt the urge, and there was a choice point for me. Do I make her stop,
Mhm.
try to, or do I offer her what she's seeking, which is my help, which required in
Mhm.
me, Jackie, to take a really deep breath, to connect to myself,
Yeah.
to remind myself of my own inherent okayness. to
Mhm.
remind myself that my child is struggling right now,
Yeah.
to separate it out just a little bit and not take it quite so personally. And once I was able to connect to myself, I found that there was a place in me that was able to reach my hand out in
Mm.
the midst of her screaming at me and just put my hand on her leg.
Mhm.
She grabbed my hand, and that was that.
Oh, connectedness right in the middle of the pain.
Connect in the middle of her screaming at me, in the middle of it, which then opened up the possibility for us to breathe together, for a conversation on, hey, sweetie, what's really going on? Like, are you really mad at me? Is that what's up? Or is there something else going on? And there was something else going on.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have gotten there if my reaction had been a disciplinary approach of, you need to stop, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Now, later, once she is back into her own sense of self,
Mhm.
I can go back and have the conversation. You
Mhm.
know what happened? That didn't feel so good. So, that doesn't, it was really hard for me to keep driving and taking you to where you wanted to go when you're talking to me like that. So, let's talk that through. What can happen next time? Because there's a part of me that doesn't want to do the nice things when that happens. And now we can problem solve it right now. And so if it was a situation where a consequence, let's say, was warranted, that would then be the time for the consequence
After you circle back.
after we circle back, not in the midst of the intensity. When
Oh.
our children are struggling and it's intense and we feel that urge, the answer is, how do I connect with myself first
Mhm.
so that I can connect with my child?
Oof.
How do I bring myself back into a moment where I feel safe? And how do I bring my child into an experience where they feel safe?
Mm.
Once we have that established, then we can do all the parenting stuff.
Yeah.
Then we can do all of that. But so often, Jackie, what I find and I hear from parents is they want to skip this piece
Yeah.
and go right into the teaching, the education, the parenting, the discipline. That actually comes second.
Mhm.
What comes first is, what does it take for connection?
Oh, so
That's
good.
that's what we're both craving in the moment anyway.
Yes, I think about, like, Dr. Dan Siegel talks to us about, like, connect and redirect. It sounds like that's kinda similar to what you're describing, and it sounds so safe and connecting, and like this person that I know loves me is also here for me when I'm in pain. Oh, that's
Exactly.
so good.
Jackie, there's one more thing that I want to share too, because even in this conversation, the reality is that we're still going to have our moments when we send our kid to timeout or we have our reaction, and when we do, because we're normal and we're human, it's just important that we remember to come back around and do a repair
Mm.
if there was a rupture. There's something quite beautiful around coming back around to our children and saying, you know what, that is not the way I wanted to handle it, even though that's how I handled it. And I bet that was scary for you when I said what I said to you, or when I grabbed your arm really forcefully, or that must have been hard for you to be in timeout and I heard you crying and like you didn't know what to do with yourself when you were in timeout, and you needed me and I wasn't there for you. So there's ways that we can come back around and do the repair.
That's so powerful. Even hearing you say that in an imagined scenario, I felt that warmth in my heart, and it wasn't even, something that I experienced with you. So I can imagine what that would feel like for a child and really keep that child parent relationship
Yeah.
nice and healthy. Well, Lisa, this has been super helpful. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the invitation to have this discussion, Jackie.
Oh, anytime, anytime. You take care. Bye bye.